Thank you for joining us for today's video presentation. After this video teaching, Brenda and I invite you to visit our website, where you will find many free resources and our video archives of previous teachings. Our bookstore has all of our current books and many of our teachings available on DVD. Also, right on the home page is the sign-up form for our email list, where you will receive our exclusive monthly newsletter. With the newsletter, you will get access to exclusive teachings, Bible research tools and resources, a monthly biblical calendar and Bible reading schedule following the traditional Torah portions, and other exclusive materials and access to future special events. We know that you will enjoy the teaching today. Thank you for joining us. Shalom and be blessed.
Jacob had 12 sons, but 2 of those sons, Judah and Joseph, end up with the birthright and the blessing of Abraham. As Judah and Joseph are introduced and begin to play a more prominent role in the Bible, the primary storyline follows that of Joseph, but Judah's story is inserted into the narrative. The story then reverts to Joseph. Finally, as the story of Joseph reaches a conclusion, Judah once more plays a more prominent role. How did the stories of Judah and Joseph compare? What does inserting Judah's story into that of Joseph's reveal about these 2 brothers? I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is Shadows of the Messiah. This account of Judah and Joseph begins with Joseph's 2 dreams and ends with their fulfillment. It begins with enmity between brothers and ends with a relationship marked with humility and caring. The enmity between Judah and Joseph has its roots in their father Jacob's preference for Joseph. Genesis 37, 3 and 4. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. Also he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Joseph takes advantage of that favoritism when he reports on the actions of 4 of his other brothers, furthering their resentment. Joseph is 17 at this time, an adolescent typically full of himself. Judah would have been 6 to 10 years older than Joseph, a young man in his 20s still given to impulsiveness. When Joseph has a dream in which his brothers bow down to him, Joseph just had to rub his brothers' noses in it. Genesis 37, 5 and 6. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear this dream which I have dreamed." Their father Jacob already favored Joseph, and by giving him a special robe, he proclaimed that he had awarded Joseph the status of the firstborn. Jacob disqualified the oldest son, Reuben, when Reuben chose to sleep with Jacob's concubine, Bilhah. Genesis 35:22. And it happened when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. Jacob elevated Joseph, the firstborn of Rachel, over his other sons, giving him the rights of the firstborn. Matters came to a head when Jacob sent his oldest 10 sons to take the flocks several days' journey to find pasture for them near Shechem. Jacob's youngest 2 sons, both from Rachel, remained with Jacob. Then Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers and their flocks. Genesis 37:14. Then he said to him, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me." So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they assumed the worst. Their little brother Joseph was now acting as an emissary for their father. What kind of report would he bring to their father? Would he bring a bad report as he did earlier? In their anger, the 10 brothers plotted to kill Joseph. They stripped him of his coat, the symbol of his favored status, and threw him in a pit. They may have eventually let him out when their anger cooled, but Judah saw a company of merchants and came up with the brilliant idea to sell him into slavery. Genesis 37:26 and 27. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. I'm sure Judah thought that the punishment fit the crime. Joseph thought to make his brothers bow down to him as if they were his servants. Selling Joseph into slavery only made sure that Joseph was the one who would have to bow down. Judah must have been quite persuasive. His brothers listened to him. He had qualities of leadership, but without the character to go with them. At Judah's instigation, Joseph was sold into slavery. To cover their sin, they bloodied Joseph's coat to make it look like he was killed by a wild animal. But they didn't anticipate the pain they would cause their father. Genesis 37, 34, and 35. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus his father wept for him. The focus of the story now turns to Judah. Although Judah is the fourth son of Leah, he will eventually be chosen to receive the promise given to Abraham that a seed from his line would be a blessing to all nations of the earth. Judah's status is only revealed years later at Jacob's death, when Jacob bestows a blessing on each of his sons. Jacob states that Judah's line will be the line of the king, Genesis 49:10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. The events after Judah's prominent role in selling Joseph shape him to become worthy of the promise. Judah's story begins with his separation from his brothers in Genesis 38:1. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. The Hebrew word translated as went down is Yerad, number 3381, meaning to descend. Literally, Judah descended from his brothers. The sages say that Judah's brothers rejected his leadership, blamed him for selling Joseph, and causing pain to their father. Judah left the fellowship of his family and instead turned to the family of a Canaanite. When the story of Joseph picks up, we read that he went down to Egypt. Genesis 39:1. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The same Hebrew word Yerad is used in this passage. Literally, Joseph went down to Egypt. Both brothers went down as they were separated from their brothers. So the stories of these two brothers are parallel stories. In their time away from their brothers, each brother will grow in character and compassion. The Bible begins with Judah's story. Judah marries a Canaanite woman, and they have 3 sons together. When he arranges a marriage for his oldest son, things begin to go wrong. Genesis 38:6 and 7. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. Wow! Er's character was summarized in one phrase: he was wicked in the sight of the Lord. Judah then gave Tamar to his second son Onan to provide sons for his brother. Genesis 38:8. And Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother." This type of marriage was called a levirate marriage. The firstborn son of the union would belong to the deceased brother to reestablish his line. Deuteronomy 25:5 and 6. If brothers dwell together, and one of them dies and has no son, the widow of the dead man shall not be married to a stranger outside the family. Her husband's brother shall go into her, take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears will succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. Onan took Tamar as his wife, but refused to impregnate her. As a result, God killed him as well. Genesis 38:9 and 10. But Onan knew that the heir would not be his, and it came to pass when he went into his brother's wife that he emitted on the ground, lest he should give an heir to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, therefore he killed him also. Judah lost 2 sons in a short period of time. He experienced the same grief of his father Jacob in losing a son. But Judah lost 2 sons instead of 1. Fearing that his young son Shelah would behave in the same way as his older sons, Judah delayed the levirate marriage of Shelah with Tamar. Genesis 38:11. Then Judah said to Tamar his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house till my son Shelah is grown." For he said, lest he also die like his brothers. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Tamar was caught in a no-win situation. She didn't have a husband, yet Judah had not released her to marry again. After a while it became apparent that Judah was not going to allow her to marry Shelah. So she takes things into her own hands, tricking Judah into having relations with her. Genesis 38:13 and 14. And it was told Tamar, saying, "Look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place which was on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. Judah thought she was a prostitute, and gave her his signet ring, cord, and staff as a pledge for the payment of a goat for her services. When word came that Tamar was pregnant, Judah thought he could be rid of his obligation to her to marry her to his son Shelah. He sought to have her put to death. Genesis 28:24. And it came to pass about 3 months after that Judah was told, saying, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Furthermore, she is with child by harlotry." So Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." As Judah's story reaches a climax, it takes a turn back to the beginning, when Judah orchestrated the sale of Joseph. He and his brothers had returned Joseph's bloody coat to Jacob, asking Jacob if he recognized the coat as Joseph's. Genesis 37:32. Then they sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and asked, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" In the Hebrew, the word know is nakar, number 5234, meaning to look at intently with recognition. When Tamar confronts Judah with the evidence that he is the father, she uses the same Hebrew word nakar, inviting Joseph to recognize his signet ring, cord, and staff. Genesis 38:25 and 26. When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, "By the man to whom these belong, I am with child." And she said, "Please determine whose these are, the signet and cord and staff." So Judah acknowledged them and said, "She has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her Shelah my son," and he never knew her again. Judah, who perpetrated the deception of Jacob, now is on the receiving end of the deception by Tamar. When confronted with his behavior, Judah confesses, takes Tamar as his wife, and acknowledges the twin sons she will bear as his own. As the story of Judah concludes, we are introduced to his 2 sons, Peretz and Zerach. These 2 sons are a shadow of the Messiah to come, and like Judah and Joseph, the story of one interrupts the story of the other. In this case, the birth of Peretz interrupts the birth of Zerach. Genesis 38:28 through 30. And so it was when she was giving birth that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." Then it happened, as he drew back his hand, that his brother came out unexpectedly, and she said, "How did you break through? This breach be upon you." Therefore his name was called Peretz. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerach. Zerach, whose name means the rising of light, desired to come first, but he had to give way to Peretz, whose name means the breaker. Judah, the lineage of the king, gave way to Joseph, the one who must suffer and provide deliverance to his family. Yeshua came first as the breaker. He broke the hold sin and the grave have over us. He broke the bonds of death as he broke out of the grave. Yeshua will return as Zerach, the rising of the light. Matthew 4:16. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and upon those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. Peretz will later be named as the ancestor of David, who in turn is the ancestor of Yeshua. The name Peretz is from Peratz, number 6555, meaning to break out. The name Peretz means the one who breaks out. This points to the Messiah who the prophet Micah describes as the breaker, Peratz, who breaks out. Peratz, Micah 2:13. The breaker has gone up before them. They have broken forth and passed on to the gate and are gone out thereat, and their king is passed on before them, and Jehovah at the head of them. Judah's son Peretz breaks out ahead of his brother. Peretz is the breaker. His brother Zerach follows him. Zerach is from number 2224, meaning a rising of light. When Messiah returns, nations and kings will come to the rising of his light. Isaiah 60, verses 1 through 3. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of Jehovah is risen upon thee. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the peoples. But Jehovah will arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And nations shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Judah, who had lost 2 sons, is now given back 2 sons, one of which will be in the line of Yeshua the Messiah. He does not obtain this through his own righteousness, but by the righteousness of Tamar. She claimed her right of levirate marriage, even though it was not offered freely by Judah. She rightly claimed the protection and security that Judah owed to her as the widow of his son. Judah has been changed by these events. When he is tested once again by the temptation to betray his brother, he will react differently. After the birth of Judah and Tamar's twin sons, the story shifts back to Joseph. Next time we will examine the tempering of Joseph's character and the reconciliation between brothers. Thanks for watching today. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this has been Shadows of the Messiah. Shalom and be blessed.